Okay, we're live, Chair.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Welcome everybody to the Housing and Homelessness panel. I'd like to, we've got an extra guest with us here this evening. I'd like to welcome Abigail Arona, who's one of serving an apprenticeship with the housing team. Welcome, Abigail. It's nice to have you here. It's something, as councillors, we're very supportive of the apprenticeship programme and the opportunities it provides for local young people. So it's really great to meet you and have you here this evening.
Thank you.
Let's kick off straight away with item 1, which is apologies from members of the panel. I've received apologies from Councillor Diggins, who can't be with us this evening. Councillor Wade may have to leave early this evening because of another very important engagement. Do we have any other apologies?
No, Chair, none received. So.
Oh, okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Would any members of the panel like to make a declaration of interest at this stage? I have none. No. Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to the first proper. We've got the housing panel work plan. Is the next item. That looks sensible to me. Tom, do you want to just take us through this very briefly, but hopefully we'll have a chance to look at it?
Essentially, these are the key topics that are coming up for February on the Cabinet Forward Plan. So, assuming that they do come forward in a timely fashion, then that would make sense for us to take them on. So yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. Plus the final paper for the tenant involvement to look at progress made against the actions that we need to be taking. So those are the suggested items for February, and I hope that it sort of comes out that way.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Any panel members have anything to say about it, or can we agree to that? Yep, thumbs up. Yep, okay, so that's agreed. Thank you. Stephen, you've got your hand up. You're on mute, Stephen.
Sorry, Linda. You'll note from the tenant satisfaction report a little bit later on the agenda, we're also suggesting we bring back to the panel the detailed action plan that we're proposing in terms of a response to the survey. And I'm just going to suggest that we could add that to the preparation and readiness for the social housing white paper, if you're comfortable with that, Chair.
That sounds like a very sensible suggestion. Thank you, Stephen. Can we add that in, Tom? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to notes of the previous meeting. And can we agree those notes of the previous meeting? I'm happy with them. Anyone want to raise anything on that? Liz?
Thanks very much, Chair. Section 20, Landlord Services Performance Dashboard. Got stuck because of the problems with QL. I wonder if we know where we've got to on that at all, or if we're still waiting for QL to be sorted.
I believe, Chair, that that later on, Richard Wood may be able to correct me, but there is an update on sort of where we are hopefully getting to as part of the second substantive item. Is that correct, Richard?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. I've got an update on that.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Any other points? If
No.
not, I suggest we agree those notes as an accurate record. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is the first substantive item 5, tenant satisfaction survey. Who's going to take us through this? Is that Bill? Are you leading on this?
Yes, it will be me, Chair.
Great. Would you like to take us through this?
Yes, I'll take you through briefly. I'm hoping people had the chance to read the report and have it in front of them. Essentially, this is the first survey of tenant satisfaction since 2015, and the first for leaseholder satisfaction, certainly since before my time. It's explained in the report the reasons for the time period since the last survey. Essentially, we decided that we would actually do a census, given it was so long since the last time. And when we did last year's survey, the number of people that were responding had dropped significantly. So we wanted to capture the view of as many people as possible. And the key results are generally that 85% people are really satisfied with the customer service. But there are some areas, while there are some really good bits, there are some bits where they're not quite so good. This is, however, very much reflective of the feelings across the board. You'll note in paragraph 6, local government association polling on metrics for local authorities, and also we carried out our survey after a year and a half of reduced services and repairs, maintenance, including the kitchens and bathrooms programs and reductions in caretaking and cleaning, and we're still really catching up on many of those. That said, it's not an excuse. We do know there's lots of things that we can improve on, and if you go down to paragraph 9, we've identified what we feel are the most significant areas that we do need to address. Overall satisfaction with the council as a landlord, satisfaction with the quality of the home, which has dropped significantly, tenants' views listened to and acted upon, and satisfaction with the outcome of antisocial behaviour. And the full details, the full breakdown of the respective results for tenants and leaseholders are in Appendix B. We've already planned a number of improvements, but for the first time, we've got a real fantastic opportunity to learn from the actual comments and suggestions that tenants and leaseholders made. Over 1,600 comments were provided by tenants and almost 100 by leaseholders, and that's really something we can really learn from. In the report of detail, the various teams have been contacting those tenants who are happy to have their comments discussed with the council, and we're happy to be contacted, and we're trying to understand what's behind it, and obviously it's feeding into a number of various improvement plans. We've started those plans, and if we take moving into repairs service, it's in paragraph 19. Repair service is all across housing the biggest driver for tenant satisfaction and dissatisfaction, and 20% of the suggestions for improvements do actually relate to repairs. But fortunately, we have been already working on many things with ODS. Essentially have a series of measures in place to improve satisfaction, and that includes the communications with customers, with messaging, contacting them before appointments, and straight after appointments they're doing post-work satisfaction surveys. And I think it's anyone who gives a score of less than 7 out of 10 gets a call straight away from the team leaders to find out why it was less than 7. So it's a new thing that they've been introducing. There's many other improvements they've got with their staff using dynamic resource scheduling. We've got a new stock solution where our stock provider is actually delivering the large items direct to tenants' doorsteps for operatives to actually work, so they don't have to keep on going back to fill up things in their van. We've got the plans for the QR portal to enable tenants to interact with the council and actually report, view and track their repairs, and they're carrying out a proactive program of revisit cases where we've had damp and mold identified where it's been reported to us in the past, to check whether things are still okay or whether there's more work that we need to be doing. And technology does feature. We are trialing the Internet of Things monitoring with smart sensors. I've actually got a demonstration next week, I think, with ODS colleagues about how that actually works, and those are capable of being put into our existing smoke detectors in properties, so it gives us a real insight into how measures that we take and how and what else we might be able to do to keep a home warm and free from damp and condensation. And ODS are doing having a concerted effort on customer care training, concentrating on communication, behaviours, and delivering a right first-time service. And they've even I mentioned earlier about the instant feedback. They will be able to go to the level of identifying a particular operative who might be absolutely brilliant, really neat and tidy, but is always late, and getting them to improve. And conversely, someone who's always on time, but they're really messy. It's that level of detail, and that, you know, it's really going to make a big difference to ODS. So they've got that. They've got a new customer services strategy, and it's really quite comprehensive, and some of us have been able to see the benefits from being demonstrated by ODS colleagues in terms of knowing exactly what's going on in a real time. ODS have been working with our tenant involvement team and resident ambassadors as well to develop the survey questions on the satisfaction, the instant transactional survey of satisfaction once jobs are done. Which I think is really invaluable for them. It's no one knows what is more important to a tenant than a tenant. I've said that many times. The quality of the home, as I say, I had to say it was very disappointing. We saw the quality of the home. All our homes are maintained to the home standard, but what is very, very clear is that the aspirations and expectations of tenants are that their home should be better. Now, what we don't know is what is actually driving that dissatisfaction. It could be our spanking brand new homes that we've got popping up everywhere else, which might make some people jealous, but we don't know. So we are going to, I mentioned in the October panel meeting about the wanting to strengthen our engagement activity with customers. That's certainly going to be one of the focuses on there. We have, however, a significantly increased investment programme, £51 million, part of the next 4-year medium-term financial plan, and we're looking to bring forward many of the repairs and improvements that we already had in place. There's also further investment in Great Estates. Again, in the paper on the social housing white paper, I'd mentioned about the decent home standard being extended into communal areas and the overall condition of the estates, and that's something we need to move forward with. And also the investment programme in terms of energy efficiency, the £8.7 million we've got already underway to reduce carbon in the home. Communications and engagement, it's clear that, and it's also one of the new draft satisfaction measures that have been, the consultation has been launched in the last week, and in terms of what the new measures for the social housing regulator will be, and satisfaction with engagement is actually one of the measures which I'm really pleased about. I'm pleased that we've been looking to improve our resource on that. And then I mentioned before, building safety, personal fire safety, carbon reduction, digital channel shift, and getting people's information correct, so that we can use it, and so that we can communicate with tenants in the modern world. And a lot of people need to be listened to, and I mentioned before, we've done very little engaging with people and speaking to them and listening to people, and that is a heavy theme in this year's budget bids. It was very clear to see that the older our tenant who's returned the survey, completed the survey, the older the tenant group, the higher the satisfaction levels. And satisfaction levels from the younger people, although we haven't got, the majority of our tenants are not in the lower age group, but dissatisfaction was actually very high. And that may well be an area to do with actually not being in the modern world in terms of having access to our digital services. And it's something that, again, we're hoping and expecting that the rollout of the QL customer portal is going to make a significant difference with that. We are going to concentrate on speaking to customers where we know they're vulnerable. We need to essentially get out and speak to as many of our tenants as possible. So vulnerable tenants, those where there's other fire and health and safety considerations, where we know we need to speak to people. engagement generally to support our carbon reduction planning. And age groups with the lowest satisfaction levels. We also have to look at the different, because we've got a whole range of issues to be speaking to people on. You know, we've got essentially we've got about 5 or 6 different groups that we're going to be targeting one after the other to try and get their views and to try and move forward. And we've got our detailed campaign, which we initially was developed for the decarbonisation agenda, but we're going to roll that out to the rest of the engagement activities, and that includes not just housing staff. It involves contact centre staff, it will involve communities, and we're looking at third sector and community groups. We want to get involved and get them working with us to spread the word. Antisocial behaviour is always very, very difficult to manage. More often than not, even if we solve a problem, the complainants do want much more draconian outcomes than would actually be considered reasonable in most cases. However, clearly with COVID, we've had a very difficult period. Very, very difficult to deal with antisocial behaviour, and obviously a lot of pent-up frustrations over lockdown. So certainly there's the antisocial behaviour team. They are setting up contacts with their tenants who've had problems in the past, and also those who said they're dissatisfied with how the outcome went. And they've got a new antisocial behaviour policy that's been recently launched, which obviously does support the victims much more, but also has a positive impact on many of those actually causing antisocial behaviour, because the driver for that antisocial behaviour is very often a vulnerability in itself. And the antisocial behaviour team will be also tasking themselves with helping to provide the support to those perpetrators. There's a whole range of other initiatives that the council has that members will be aware of to improve service, improve joined up working, to provide better outcomes. The service integration project, I think most members will be fully aware of. And we've got the 2 pilot areas in Barton and Blackbird Leys, and they've been testing a number of approaches to collaborative working. And they've got a wealth of case experiences already that is being discussed with colleagues about basically different ways of working and trying to find other solutions. And one of the key things is to look to partners and again people in the community to help to solve some of the problems. We've got a customer experience change program, and again it's very much centered on how we deliver more streamlined and effective services to all customers, and that includes use of technology, channel shift, efficient self-serve, and this is across the council. It's not just within housing, and we've had a number of workshops with teams to actually move forward and identify all the opportunities where we can actually move this forward. And the aim of that sits well with the service integration product, because it's essentially trying to release resource to support those customers in greatest need. Service delivery review. This is an area where a review of the actual how the services provided to the council tenants as a landlord, how they're actually provided. At the moment, obviously, we've got a number of different teams in a number of different service areas, and we're asking, getting an external review to see whether this is the best way of doing things, or whether there are things or where there's opportunities to change. And obviously, with the service integration project and customer experience program, there are lots of links in. They're all quite interwoven. So we've published the results. They are now online on the council's websites. As I say, overall, there are some really good positive messages from the survey, from the results. There are some disappointing ones, some quite understandable, and particularly in terms of the where we have reduced services for the past year, catching up. In normal times we'd be comparing ourselves with peers, but with having carried out a survey in 2021, there are essentially no one to compare with to give anything meaningful, because those who've carried out surveys, it will almost certainly they'll all be pre-COVID times. There was one housing association with 5,000 residents who carried out a survey in 2018 and repeated it in 2020, and saw a 27% reduction in satisfaction. So essentially rendering comparison meaningless. However, we've got clear areas for improvement. We're not taking this lightly. We're taking a whole council approach, working with all the different teams to identify and deliver necessary improvement plans. We've got the plan maintenance, we've got the work on the decarbonisation, and as Stephen mentioned earlier, we'll be bringing back to be monitored through this group our service improvement plans to actually deliver all of the things that I've touched upon in this presentation. I think that's it, until open the floor for questions, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, going to open up for questions or just comments from either councillors or any of our tenant ambassadors who are here with us this evening. I can see Nadine's hand up.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the report and the survey. I think it's important to have survey satisfaction, customer satisfaction survey, and the improvements that you are trying to make to the service. Yes, I mean, it's very important to engage with the tenants, and as a councillor for Little More, we do get a lot of tenants who complain, for example, that they have had repairs in their house that need to be done, for example, on dampness and leaks and things like that, and they had contacted the council and nobody had done anything for them, or I mean for a long time. Some of them they had been for a very long time. So obviously we pass on this request to the council department. It's interesting what you are saying about this is the younger groups where the least satisfied. Actually, in Little More, they are about people who are older, who have got disability, long-term condition, who complain that their housing is not being adapted. The tenants, their housing is not being adapted to their needs. So there is some of these complaints like that. The other one is the Alice Smith Square. There has been lots of reports of antisocial behaviour, so I wondered if you had any reports on that, anything had been done. There was a knife assault, the knife attack, and various kind of assault. So I wondered if you have got any kind of report on that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Certainly, what we found with and looking at it was probably the actual comments that people had made in the survey results. Some of them were quite surprised, and the length of time that I'll quote some. Well, I won't quote, but a typical example will be we've been waiting months or years for this to be done, and you know, I've actually looked on some of their repairs logs to see, and there's been nothing reported in the last 18 months for that particular tenant. That's not untypical. So I would encourage everyone who's got a repair to report it, and then report it through the council's contact centre, and that's the contactcityhomes@oxford.gov.uk email address. Things have been difficult, but certainly, you know, I do think that we really need to get people to report it. It's, you know, there are so many things where people, I don't know how it's not got through, but we need to get them reporting them. So anyone who's been waiting, you know, more than a month for a standard repair, or 2 days, sorry, for something that's urgent, they need to be escalating it. And they do that through the contact centre. And if members have any repairs reported to them, then please do report it, but through the same mechanism to the contact centre, using that email address or ringing it through. Things have improved with QL. I mentioned there's been significant. We've had teething problems, but we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and certainly the operations side from ODS there are some areas where you really are seeing improvement. So please do encourage people to repair things. And I say, if they come direct to you, certainly. With the disabilities, there's two routes for people to request adaptations. If it's something minor, we can normally pick it up direct with ODS. But we would also, however, suggest that people get an assessment by the occupational therapist at the county council, because if it's anything major, we'd need them to actually make the request to us. Now we can do a referral ourselves, and we ask county to do an assessment, but by the same token, an individual can contact the county to request an assessment, and that the occupational therapist would then be able to either direct it for minor adaptations straight into the ODS minor adaptations team, and if not, if it's a more extensive adaptation request, the OT would refer it to our property service team for consideration and action. So again, there shouldn't be any delays. ODS colleagues are not reporting any delays, particularly on minor adaptations, and we're not aware of any current delays on new cases coming forward. Some of the solutions might take a longer time. Some of the solutions involve extensions, which can be quite substantial and take a lot of, sometimes with planning and designs and architects, can take a year or so or more until things are ready. But in terms of new applications, there shouldn't be any reason for any delays. In terms of the stabbing, I'd need to defer to antisocial behaviour team colleagues who are not represented.
Let's take that off elsewhere. Take that up elsewhere, if that's okay. Stephen C, you have your hand up. Do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just to add a couple of things for members in addition to what Bill said. On just generally on repairs, I think we make reference in the report. It's well understood that tenant satisfaction is driven heavily by the quality of the repair service, which is why I think Bill spent a little bit more time around all the changes that we're looking to and improvements we're looking in terms of the repair service. So it's the single most bit of the service, if you like, that drives overall tenant satisfaction. And just picking up the point that was made around dampness and condensation and so on. For anybody on the panel who are tracking some of the things that are happening with the new social housing regulator, there's been a spate of findings from the regulator around things like health and safety and so on. But there's been a number around landlords who are not dealing with dampness and condensation particularly well, and that's sort of hit the sort of national press over the last few months. In terms of our response to some of that, we've started to track where there have been repeated requests for repairs around dampness and condensation, and so we've been sort of tracking whether or not we've been successful in sorting out their particular issues. So I just wanted to reassure the panel that we've been proactive in regards to how we're managing that activity. And I think one of the things I think we need to be very conscious about is where condensation and dampness could be being caused by people's reluctance to be able to, and inability to afford keeping their homes warm. We've been doing quite a little bit of work in one of the tower blocks on Blackbird Leys where we've got adequate heating systems, but because of people's worries about rising energy bills, they're struggling to put the heating on, which is causing other secondary issues. So I just wanted to reassure the panel that we're focusing in on some of those things. And just one other addition on the adaptations, a little bit surprised with the comment around adaptations in the fact that, we put substantial amounts of money every year into adaptations. So on ordinary straightforward adaptations, we're spending up to about £1 million a year on adaptations, and up to about £500,000 a year on some of the major adaptations where we might be, building an extension or a major, putting a ground floor wet room in, or a through floor lift. So we pride ourselves on that service. I'm just a little bit intrigued by the comment, but obviously we need to learn from everything in terms of the feedback from residents as to where we need to improve. Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to come in.
Okay, thank you. Lawrence, would you have your hand up?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions. You mentioned this new policy covering antisocial behaviour. Is this actually available online, or would it be possible to circulate it to councillors?
It is available online.
Oh, in that case, could you circulate the link to find it?
It was agreed by the last cabinet, Lawrence. So if you look at the cabinet,
oh, it's on the cabinet.
The agenda for the cabinet. Yeah,
okay.
You see it there.
I'll send that round.
Do you have a second question?
Yeah, possibly to do with QL, but I understand we're going to have a briefing about that in a little while, so I'll pass on that for the time being.
Okay. I think we've heard from Bill about QL, but I've got a question about that as well, so we can come back to that perhaps. Okay. Chris,
yeah, you have a couple of, I mean, they're fairly linked questions, but just around the disparity for in the survey for younger people. I mean, in the report itself, it mentions that this is the case around communications and engagement, but in the numbers at the back end of the report in the appendix, it's quite clear that the younger you get in the different demographics, the less satisfied you are across the board. And I think it would be, I find it helpful to get any reflections as to what's driving that, because it's not just the under 25s, which you know is a smaller portion of the respondents, but also that 25 to 59 bracket reports lower satisfaction across the board with the over 60s. So I think I find it helpful to have a kind of broad analysis as to what's going on there, as to what's causing that. And relatedly, just on the again on the same page, on page 25, we've got the breakdown of the responses from leaseholders, and there's a big deviation, a big difference between the numbers here and the numbers on the previous page. So just would be keen to get an understanding of anything we know that's driving that quite big variance between those two groups of people.
Yeah, I think the first.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Can I just add to that before Bill comes back? Just I just wondered. Yeah, I was particularly alarmed by those statistics, about the general satisfaction statistics, and wondered if we could drill down into that a bit more. And on the age, I wondered if perhaps there was a factor might be overcrowding, and like younger families, with kids, perhaps in overcrowded accommodation at the moment. They might be waiting for a transfer, and could that be fueling some of the dissatisfaction from those younger age groups? So I was just wondering whether we're able to look at the data in terms of whether people are overcrowded, whether they're on the housing register and bidding for a transfer. Do we know that about the people that are saying that they're dissatisfied, or is that not relevant?
Well, it probably is relevant, to be fair, Chair. The one of the questions that we asked in the survey is whether the people were happy for us to be contacting them about the reason for their dissatisfaction. And if they said yes, then where possible, we've been getting in touch. I think we'd need to see if there's any more work that Acuity can do for us in terms of providing some more crosstab work, because very often, if you want to look into that level of detail, that's where you get that kind of information, see if there's any trends. I do think the most important thing is to actually ask people, and it's going back to this engagement work, which we're going to be launching into, is to finding out what is actually the reason for their dissatisfaction. And it's possible that we can guess and assume digital might be one, general expectations, the level of expectations is another. We do get people who come in for some of the younger people who've never been tenants before saying, why isn't it carpeted? Where's my TV? Why haven't I got this, that and the other? And the level of expectation is something that we're not able and never will be able to actually meet. But we need to actually speak to people and understand that. And I think more will come out over the next year or so. So I think there's a multiple factors there. In terms of leaseholders, yeah, the relationship we have with leaseholders is very different, of course. They have bought their flats either through the right to buy or through subsequent on sales, and our relationship is very much financial, which obviously we want it to be more than that, but a large number of the leaseholders, or a fair proportion, the non-residential landlords, and they let the property out. Some of them obviously are not happy when we send them the bills for the service charges. Obviously there are some leaseholders who are not happy with communal areas in the same way as some of the tenants are. But the actual repairs to the property, it's only the communal areas that leaseholders that we'd actually do leaseholder repairs for, because leaseholders are responsible for their own internal repairs. So very much it's a different relationship. And I say very much it is purely about money rather than improvements within the home. But we still need to speak to them, because again, it's at one point, until we actually created the post of a leasehold management officer here within housing, there was just a single financial leasehold officer, and all they did was collect the service charges, and that was their sole relationship. We've moved some way to improving that, but clearly there's a long way to go to actually understand how we can improve for leaseholders. It's all part of this whole engagement piece. You wouldn't normally expect you would normally expect the leaseholder satisfaction was very much lower than tenant satisfaction, but obviously we haven't done a survey of our leaseholders, certainly since I've been here.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So with Olga, yes.
Yes, been very interesting to hear you speak, Bill, and about the emphasis on the engagement piece. And as I understood, you said that there's a heavy bit in the budget for more resource to support that. I'm just aware what kind of resources would be made available to continue the very good work being done by the TI team in responding to this STAR survey in a timely manner, because they've opened up a very huge communication piece through that work, I believe, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks, Olga.
I think I caught most of that. It was slightly difficult hearing everything, but did you mention the CRT in your question, Olga, or did I miss it?
No, it's the tenant involvement team, I think.
All right, the
resourcing going forward,
no,
and how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's okay, I mentioned in October panel. There is a lot of people seem to do actually confuse involvement and engagement, and because they're not the same thing. Simon's team is tenant involvement. Now, engagement can lead to additional involvement. Simon's team have been incredibly successful in recruiting resident ambassadors to be part of the co-regulatory work we do to analyse services, to do service reviews, to drive improvements, and to hold us to account. And obviously the tenants here are a testament to that. And obviously tenant involvement continue to be important. Tenant engagement is actually going out and speaking to people who we've never actually spoken to possibly in years. They might not want to be involved, and they might not want to be involved in reviewing services, but we need to hear what their views are and what makes them tick, as well as have a look around the house and see if they do happen to have any damp and mold, and re-engage with our tenants for the first time. Simon's team are They're TPAS accredited, had re-accreditation last year, at the beginning of this. They're one of the first ever local authorities to become fully accredited by TPAS, and they are an award-winning team. They came runner-up or third in the National Team of the Year for resident involvement, and we actually do really, really well. I'm really, really proud of that team, and long may they continue. And the more ambassadors we get, the more then obviously we'll have to resource to do that. The engagement people are that obviously they'll be working hand in hand. If someone says they're interested in being involved, that's half Simon's battle, is getting people involved and keeping them involved, and this is just complementary to that.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Liz, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to say that your team's response, Bill, to the STAR survey is really impressive. You could have blamed the reduction in satisfaction on COVID, lockdown, misery, all that stuff, but you didn't. And you've immediately started putting things in place to improve it. And I'm very impressed with that. I might have waited for a year or so until COVID had finished, but you didn't, you carried on. What I wanted to talk about was engagement activity. Who is going to do this? You've mentioned the resident ambassadors, but obviously what you're talking about is a very big deal. It's probably more than resident ambassadors are going to be able to manage without a lot of assistance. And the other thing is the support needs for people with antisocial behaviour. Talking about officers being involved here, it sounds a bit like victim support, but it's almost the opposite. It's the perpetrator support. But all of this is going to be quite complex and expensive to administer. And you mentioned at one point that there's going to be a heavy demand on this year's budget, if I've got that right. So I wanted to ask you how you saw the engagement activity being set up and what sort of costs we're looking at for this.
It's actually in the budget papers, the draft budget consultation, but we are intending to increase the staff resource. Create a staff resource. There isn't a staff resource on engagement. To create a staff resource on engagement, and that is to cover general engagement. I mentioned that the different activities, the reasons why we wanted to engage with people, building safety, fire safety, and the others. I've actually, if all goes well, it will be a new team which will have essentially titled customer experience, which will have the engagement staff as well as the taking into account some of the other staff who probably sit much better in a customer experience team. So we can really get behind what makes people tick, and that includes complaints, includes some of the resident liaison work, and includes the building fire safety engagement, which is there's some specific tasks associated with the higher risk buildings or tower blocks, the dotted line into building, but again it's engagement. So in order to make that work, it makes sense to have that as part of a wider team. So you get the resilience in there if someone wasn't around. We do have an actual team to actually make things work. So it is a bid for resources, is a bid for new members of staff to actually really deliver this, and I think it's essential. We really do need to understand what our customers are thinking, so we can actually make improvements that people want. So far, we've made improvements that we think they might want, and really that's only the start of it. We really need to get much better information on what customers actually need and want.
Okay, thanks, Stephen Clark.
Yeah, just to add to what Bill's just said, and specifically Liz, is that in the draft budget that was approved at Cabinet, we've also proposing to increase the number of tenancy management officers. They're under considerable pressure, the team currently, and we're acutely aware of that. And in the draft budget, there's a suggestion that will increase the number of tenancy management officers by a further 3.
Great. Stephen, you've just answered the question I was about to ask, which was I think we've heard a lot about QL and how, obviously we're investing a lot in that and hoping it will really improve the reliability of the service. But I'm interested in the human face of landlord services as well. And obviously that's really the tenancy management officers. So it's good to hear about that further investment. But obviously it's probably not just about money and more posts. Have we got the right people in those roles? How are they working with ODS and with the community response team? Are they working in the best way possible, to do that job and improve the tenant experience? I guess that is something that the review that you've commissioned, will cover. And I'm thinking, perhaps it might be a good idea after that review comes out, and if there are quite significant changes to the way the service is organised, that might be a good time to actually, I would say, rebrand our landlord services. But it's not really rebranding, because it doesn't really have much of a brand in the first place, if you don't mind me saying. It's very just, it's not distinct from the council as a city council, compared to say the image or the brand, the identity that like ODS has. Obviously there's a reason for that, because it being an arm's length company, and the way similarly the landlord arms of other councils, especially where they are an Elmo or have been an Elmo, they've gone through that process and developed a corporate identity. We're not doing that. We've got an in-house service, and that's great. We want to keep it that way, but I think perhaps there is something we could learn from that. From the corporate world, in terms of like creating a brand and an identity for the service that people can identify with and feel they have a relationship with. It's hard to have an opinion on a very amorphous, large organisation. It can be a bit faceless. I think it perhaps might be easier if it had more of an identity, but perhaps that's something to think of, a brand identity.
Could I just come back, Chair, on a couple of your points? You're raising a number of the questions that we need to answer as we move forward, and of course, landlord services is actually only a tiny part of the landlord offering, because it's the council as a whole is acting as a landlord. So I take your point around branding and so on. It's raised a few questions in my mind, but I think these are some of the things that we do want to explore as part of the external review, because what we are clear about is that the role of the tenancy management team is probably too narrow and specific, and it's been a point of debate for some time, I think, amongst members, certainly since I've been at Oxford, as to what is that specific role, particularly in relation to coordinating other services across the council and ODS in terms of providing a seamless service to residents. So I think that's what we really want to explore, is what is the tenancy management role, and should it be broadened? And we've started to broaden it in relation to some of the issues to do with ODS and so on, but we've been limited in terms of capacity. And just to pick up your point around QL and digitisation and so on, the additional point I'd like to add is that what we want QL to be able to do is to take out some of the routine activity that people like tenancy management officers have to do that is not really customer facing. So take out the routine stuff, turn it into a technical solution, and then that releases the capacity amongst those tenancy management officers to really do that engagement with residents. Because I completely agree with you, it's the face-to-face quality engagement and with residents that we're looking to improve on. I think we can explore this as we move through the improvement programme, and I think there's a lot of rich stuff there in what you've just said in terms of how we explore how we want to change going forward into the future.
Okay, thank you. Can I raise one more question, which is just about mapping the responses, and can we use this survey to highlight any particular problems? I know that there's blocks in Blackbird Leys which are subpar, and like the maisonettes that have been talked about for potential demolition and rebuild or extensive regeneration for years and years, and I would be very surprised if the results of the survey didn't reflect the condition of those homes. Can we use this to map that and identify the need and the problem, and for it to perhaps feed into the prioritisation of future capital works?
Stephen, do you want to go on that, or do you want me to pick it up?
I'm assuming the answer is yes, Bill. We can.
Yeah, I mean, we've
quality of home by geographical area, can't we?
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's difficult to identify people unless they've actually said yes to they can be identified to us. But in terms of general, we can. There is a larger assessment that's been done in terms of different assets, the quality of them, and how lots of things that influence them. So the lettability, the number of repairs, the reports of antisocial behaviour, were all fed into essentially a rating system of all different blocks. And you'll not be surprised to know that those some of those blocks that you're referring to do feature quite heavily in those that we know about. We need to do things to, and some others we need to explore more. And certainly, I think it's worth exploring whether we can speak to any of the people that have been identified or identified themselves from the survey to see if we can actually, if the numbers kind of give us an indication. But I do think, speaking to people in general is probably going to give us a bigger picture. I mean, there is some works going on in Blackbird Leys over the next few weeks and months to some of the blocks, as well as some Carwin improvements as well. But they are featuring very heavily in our investment programme.
Okay, thanks. And just still on Blackbird Leys quickly, I mean, the 55% figure for tenants who believe the council listens to them, obviously that's really disappointing. Is there anything we can do to improve that, in particular, with the Blackbird Leys regeneration scheme moving forward through gateway number 1 onto the next stage? The next stage is all about engagement. What can we do, so we're not waiting for the results of this external review, but we can actually make improvements and in time for residents to feel they have been listened to on this really important regeneration scheme.
Yeah, I mean the consultation on the Blackbird Leys regen scheme, and the number of existing council tenants affected directly, who in terms of are going to be displaced, is really very low. It's the residents who live above the shops on Blackbird Leys Road. They're the only ones who are directly affected. The rest of it is the wider community, and obviously that will include the people in the towers and the surrounding flat blocks. And yeah, I think the whole programme of engagement, obviously we've been speaking to our tenants, but the whole programme of engagement for Blackbird Leys residents on the rest of it is being led very much by Catalyst, who are our partners on Blackbird Leys. And I think it'd be important for us to feed that into Catalyst so we can see what their plans are in terms of that further engagement. I know they're very keen to push the engagement agenda themselves, but we can feed that into them. And in terms of generally listening, again, we are a district council with, and obviously we're not a unitary, so we are affected by other factors. So what we don't know is whether there's, I mean, we do often get comments, why don't you repair the roads? Why don't you do this, that and the other, which are not necessarily relating to housing. So it's sometimes important to understand that there are some other things, but I think we do need to do so much more listening to people and speaking to them and getting their views and then acting upon their views, I think is really, really important, which is why I've said a number of times about the engagement piece. It's going to be invaluable to us.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Anything else anyone wants to come in with before we move on? We've spent nearly an hour on this. So I think, Tom, rather than make any sort of direct recommendations as a result of this discussion for the next cabinet, this discussion will form part of the background for the wider piece of work that we will hope to send to cabinet in the new year.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's move on to the next item.
Really quickly, sorry, I just had one final point, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Chair.
yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say this might be one for the new year, but I just wanted to flag it now that I think just a final thing is that the list on page 16 of the areas that have been kind of earmarked for clear improvements, I found really, really useful to have that kind of spelt out. And I wonder whether there's something around target setting and KPIs around those specific points that would be helpful in terms of for the panel to be monitoring and to kind of inform future discussions. But as I say, that might be something for once we've seen improvement plans, etc. But I just wanted to flag it now just in case.
Yeah, I think it should be included.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6, which is the Q2 update on the performance of housing services and the housing related functions of Oxford City Council. Who's going to introduce this report for us? Richard.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm not going to go through every single section of the paper. Bill's in fact covered some in the previous piece, but just a few kind of highlights that I'll just bring forward before questions and answers. So I'm just covering homelessness and rough sleeping. I think basically the whole kind of update in this area is very kind of focused on the overall context and of continued pressure on the whole homeless system. That we've seen that through the whole pandemic, but that's continued into quarter two. And what we've kind of the new kind of element of that through quarter two has been increasing pressure from the private rented sector. And that's very much in line with the ending of the eviction ban, the central government eviction ban, which is putting even further pressure onto the system. And with the private rented sector being a traditional major source of homelessness in Oxford. Despite this, though, KPIs across the homelessness measures are performing pretty well. Which is a testament to our teams, with a lot of continued focus on the prevention of homelessness, with that KPI looking good as well, and continued good work in the temporary accommodation area, despite a considerable amount of pressure with increased placements in that area, and the only reason we're still within target overall numbers in temporary accommodation is because of all the work that's been going on to move people out TA faster, with more rapid rehousing. That is something that we want to continue to build on over the coming months. We've also received some good news in regards to an uplift in our homelessness prevention grant as a one-off, which is funding from central government to help us with the prevention of homelessness. And we very much are looking to use that money to help tackle this growing pressure from the private rented sector through supporting tenants with rent arrears, but also increased support around tenant landlord relations, mediation, to try to get as many people as possible, support them to stay in their homes, which I think will be positive work that the panel will be able to see over the coming months. Just focusing on the rough sleeping KPI, that one currently is off target, reporting 27 on the street count estimate at the end of Q2 against a target of 17 for the end of the financial year. You know, there was a lot of context there. Q2 is normally the toughest period for rough sleeping in Oxford, with the weather being better as it captures the summer months, and in particular this year there's considerable pressure due to the ending of Everybody In, leaving the Canterbury House, for example, where we had interim accommodation throughout the lockdown period of the pandemic. And as we leave that, it's putting considerable pressure on the whole system, which means that it's just difficult to move people off the streets, but is a temporary phenomenon. You know, that we will pass this, and the report provides a further update on that. And overall direction in regards to the kind of transformation of our approach around rough sleeping continues, with the new alliance of providers, with a county-wide approach to single homelessness, increasingly mobilising ready for an April start. New Housing First units coming online at the moment, and looking in options in regards to Floyd's Row, which is obviously has to be brought back in a way that's COVID secure, but lots of things coming down the road that will help with numbers as the year goes on and into the future. And I would just draw the panel's attention to that. While we're above target at 27, that is approximately the same as the end of the last financial year, where we ended at 26. And when you compare that to the pre-pandemic figure, which was 62 rough sleepers, it does show that we haven't returned to that period, and numbers are still historically down, but we do need to go further. Other areas that I'll just highlight before I go to questions: affordable development, that is reported on target this quarter. 68 affordable homes have been delivered in the first 6 months of the year, which is a significant increase in pace, going back looking across previous years, and on track towards the 1,200 affordable unit target that was set at the start of this year for the full year period. The page will also updates on the efforts around decarbonisation, on top of the LAD IB scheme that we updated previously, the panel on which was funding from central government on decarbonisation measures. A new bid's gone in under the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund during the quarter, which is more positive, hopefully more positive news to invest in stock around meeting our zero carbon goals. The only last thing I'll just touch on, which Tom mentioned at the start of this meeting, was just an update around the social housing tenant satisfaction measures that I know the panel was interested to seeing in the future. And obviously we've been aiming to bring to the panel as soon as possible ahead of the national implementation, which is, I believe, in 2023. We were planning to try to bring something to this meeting, but then we received news in November that the social housing regulator was going out to a consultation following publication of a revised set of these KPIs, because we've only ever seen the draft so far, alongside technical notes about how local government should collect that information. At time of producing the report, we didn't have that yet. That's just been published, I think, in the last week. So we're currently looking through that and plan to, reply to the consultation, the central government consultation. And very much we then want to use the new technical information to underpin those KPIs and confirmed KPIs. Now working with colleagues across the council and ODS to try to bring that information from now on, so that will be going into hopefully into the Q3 performance update in the new year. And I think more generally we've got the plans that these reports in the future will be more dashboard focused, so it will contain the white paper measures, but also across the board we'll try to bring it more in a dashboard fashion, which I hope the panel will welcome, but I'm happy to take feedback on. So that was just the main things I wanted to update on, but I'm happy to take questions on anything I've said or anything in the report.
Thank you, Richard. If I can come in first, if that's if colleagues will forgive me. We had a question that's been passed on from the finance and performance panel, which there wasn't anyone from your team there to answer their question in detail. It's a two-part question. I think the first part you have addressed, but perhaps you might have something else to say about the second part.
Yeah, so I spoke to colleagues, and I've got a written reply from a colleague that I can give to Tom to put in the minutes, which covers both parts, rather than repeating the first bit, as you say. On the second piece around second part of the question, which I think was something to do with, is this the right KPI then, if it's constantly showing red throughout this year? I think that's fair challenge and a conversation that we've been having internally. Obviously, rough sleep is an extremely complex and multifaceted problem that the city faces, and City Council is one of many organisations that are leading one, but one of that need to tackle that, and several national, local trends feed into that and determine if the number goes up or down. And colleagues have fed back to me to say on that KPI that we, just because this KPI goes into the red doesn't mean that our long-term strategy that we feel is the right strategy, and we've had many conversations at panel about this over the previous months and years, just because it goes into the red doesn't mean it's the wrong strategy. Short-term factors like leaving the everybody in scheme does drive that, and it doesn't mean that overall we're not going in the right direction. So I think what we will be doing over the next few months going into the next financial year will be to conduct a full review of that KPI and see if maybe a better one can be produced that more hones in on the City Council's impact, in particular around our ability to actually offer accommodation for move on. Maybe that would be more important. So I don't think we have a firm answer on that one yet, but certainly I think that's really valued feedback from panel, and something that we will be considering and we can update on at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it might not be a firm answer, but I think it's an adequate answer for now, so thank you. I hope that will keep them happy. Okay, anyone else want to come in on this? Liz?
Thanks very much, Linda. Just two questions briefly. One is about 223,000 from the government to support private tenancies. How are you intending to spend this? Will it be grants or loans to people for deposits, or will it be another officer to do more engagement? I mean, it sounds a lot of money, but obviously that kind of money gets used up pretty quickly. That's my first question. And then the second one is about Floyd's Row. 16 beds, which is great. But 16 beds might just be enough to house the people from the youth hostel. And the thing that worries me about that is that, as I understand it, the people in the youth hostel accommodation have probably got more serious and long-term needs than the ones who are in Canterbury House, was it? And I wonder if there's going to be the support provision for them in Floyd's Row, or indeed for anybody who's in Floyd's Row, that they will have had to some extent while they've been in the youth hostel. So two different questions. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks. So on the additional grant from central government, I think in some ways it's both. So certainly some of that will be grants, or basically clearing of the loan. That's a better word than grants. Sorry, clearing of arrears. Sorry, using all the wrong words. But alongside additional support from officers. So we are probably, these aren't confirmed plans yet, but additional resource in the team to focus on the working between tenants and landlords, and then that link to then clearing of arrears. But that won't be done in a way that can leverage the biggest gains against homelessness as possible. So very much a kind of part of a wider package that we're developing, where long-term kind of problems that have caused the arrears to come about, might be debt, might be unable to access employment, etc., mental health. They will be supported, and at the same time then looking at clearing the short-term problems with arrears and etc., and then also dealing with the relationship between the landlord and the tenants to make sure that we don't want to be in a situation where we clear arrears and then the tenancy fails at 3 months later, 6 months later. We want to make sure that the long-term problems are dealt with. The landlord is on board equally alongside the tenant to make the tenancy work, and then using those financial tools to stabilise the current situation.
Thank you, Stephen. You want to come in as well?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So we're exploring, Liz, we're exploring using the extra money to strengthen our mediation work with landlords. So just to explain a little bit more to what Richard just said, but essentially to say, look, if you're threatening someone with homelessness because of arrears, can we do some mediation? We could clear some of those arrears using some of this money. We could, the tenant could still retain responsibility for some of the arrears, but the landlord might want to also forego some of that rent because, you know, it obviously costs them money to go to court, and there's lost rental income while it's void and so on. So it is to try and strengthen our mediation offer with landlords. And then just on Floyd's Row, we're just finalising arrangements with the lease arrangements between ourselves and St Mungo's for the whole building. And of course, what we do is, in terms of the support, St Mungo's would, our contract with the Alliance, our new contract with the Alliance between ourselves, the county and the district, so that the new Alliance includes Floyd's Row. So essentially, St Mungo's would be providing the support for those clients that move from where they are currently and into Floyd's Row.
Just to be clear, Stephen, is the plan for Floyd's Row still, you know, the rapid assessment and very short-term emergency accommodation, rather than people, say, moving out of YHA into there, you know, to live there for any length of time?
Yes, is simply a straightforward answer to that. Yeah, the idea behind the model remains, although we can't obviously move to that model because there's still restrictions, COVID restrictions around use of the space. But we're proposing the same model, but there'll be less numbers going through the model. Yeah.
And when will that start?
Well, we're hoping to finalise the lease literally this side of Christmas, and then to start mobilising in the new year. We want to be able to make it available so that we can, our aim is to make some space available, because we have got an absolute backstop of the YHA of the end of February. We've extended the lease with Network Rail until the end of February, but we can't go past that date.
Okay, thank you. I'm really hopeful Floyd's Row will be a really brilliant facility that we can be proud of, and really doing innovative work once it gets going. Be great to see it doing what it was supposed to do.
Absolutely.
Lawrence.
Thank you. Richard, a couple of questions to do with affordable housing. First of all, the figure of 1,200 affordable homes in the city, is that actually in the city, or does this include developments just outside the city? And the other question was 300, it's approximately 300 affordable houses every year as a straight line, but I wondered whether you could tell us the sort of spread of delivery against the 1,200 across the next few years.
So in regards to the first question, yes, so it's in the city only, that figure, but it does take in RPs, so registered providers and housing associations and the city's own building. And when I say the city's council's own construction, that takes in OCHL as well. So it's city only, but across all builds or homes. In regards to the second question, I don't know if Stephen might know, but I don't know that off the top of my head, although I know it's not a even profile. It's a 4 years with a profile that goes over that, and someone will be able to give that. But I don't know if Stephen, you know more about that off the top of your head.
I Lawrence, I think we'd have to take that away and give you a feel for this sort of profile across the 4 years. Yeah.
The only thing I could add is that there's this year, so this financial year, there is quite a lot in quarters 3 and 4 that hopefully we can update on at the next meeting. Because I did have a look at the profile going through this financial year, but no, I don't have it to hand, the full 4 years. So yes, we can get that for you, presumably.
Okay, you happy with that, Lawrence? Okay, would anyone else like to come in on this item? No? Okay, in which case, thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
That's our last substantive item. The only other thing on the agenda is the dates of future meetings. We've got there the 2nd of February and the 4th of April. Is that correct, Tom? Any updates we need to know about?
That's correct. The only thing, just I think I have sent something around already about it, but 10th of January is the budget review group where the housing element will be looked at, and to which all members of the housing panel are invited.
Yeah, and we'll have the opportunity to question Oxford City Housing Limited there as well, won't we?
Yes, I'll be inviting them along. Just as a question actually about that, do you want the city council officers who are involved with OCHL, or do you want Helen Horn, the managing director?
Could I suggest both?
I don't know.
Chair?
I'll leave that to OCHL to decide who they want to field, really. Yeah.
Okay, Chair, could I suggest both?
Yeah. I was going to say the same, Stephen. I think it probably needs myself there as well as Helen.
Okay.
I mean, I think the sort of questions we might want to ask might be about, well, clearly about the budget, but about how that relates to the business plan as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll invite Helen as well.
Chair, can I just add that the point that was just raised around the for delivering of the units and that Lawrence made, I think Helen could pick that issue up as well if she's coming to the next meeting.
This would be the budget review, which is slightly different and tends to be quite tight for time.
Okay.
So we'll try and sort it out outside the meeting, I'd suggest.
Okay, thank you. So I think that brings this meeting to a conclusion. So the meeting now ends. So thank you very much, everyone.